Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome into the week 2 edition of my top waiver wire targets and streamable defenses. I hope you guys got a big W to start the season off. I did win a majority of my league, so I'm in a pretty good mood about that. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and dive into today's video just in case we have any first time listeners. I'm going to start with my waiver wire targets. I'm going to give you guys my top quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, and flex out of the week. And to qualify to make this list, these players do have to be available in at least 50% of the rosters on ESPN. So yeah, let's just go ahead and dive into this. My quarterback out of the week, I wanted to see if I could find maybe a young quarterback we could add this week that could potentially be a long-term option for you this season. And I am going to go with the second-year quarterback in Atlanta, Michael Penix Jr. He's only rostered on 20.1% of the rosters on ESPN right now. In the first weekend of the NFL returning, he threw for 298 yards and a touchdown. He also had 21 rushing yards and a touchdown, which I do like that. Penix Jr. does have that. He's a good thrower, but he does have that athleticism where he can take off and run and get you the yards. Now he's not actively looking for to do that, so it doesn't necessarily give you a higher floor as a quarterback. But then you got games like last week where he gets you 21 yards and a touchdown on the ground. One stat I do like, and which is why I turned to him as your quarterback out of the week, is in his 4 starts in the NFL, he's thrown for at least 200 passing yards in each of those games. Now, this weekend, he does have the Minnesota Vikings, so that's a little bit of a tougher matchup going against that Brian Flores defense. But there were moments last night in that game where Caleb Williams and them and the Bears offense were able to move the ball through the air against the Vikings defense. He honestly should have had more passing yards, but there were some balls that just got away from him when he was targeting his wide receivers. So I do think Penix Jr. wouldn't be a bad option, but if you don't necessarily love your starting quarterback that you have right now, I would at least pick up Penix Jr., add him to my bench, and if he continues to get this like 200 plus passing yards a game, you can slide him into your lineup. My running back out of the week, this guy was one of the this is a repeat name from last week's list. If you guys watched that, I told you guys to go ahead and stash him on your bench so you didn't have to fight for him to get you on the rosters this week. Now you're going to have to kind of fight for him, especially with there not being that many great running back options on the waiver wire. But it's the rookie running back for the Cleveland Browns, Dylan Sampson. He's only rostered on 32.8% of the rosters right now. This past weekend in his first NFL game, he had 12 rushes for 29 yards. Doesn't blow you away on the ground, but what you do love in the PPR half-point PPR leagues is how much he was involved in the passing attack. Joe Flacco was feeding him the ball as a check down option. He had 8 receptions for 64 yards on 8 targets. Now I do understand that Quinshon Judkins has signed his contract with the Cleveland Browns, but there is I believe the NFL investigation still going on, so there is a possible suspension that could happen for Judkins. As I mentioned last week with Sampson, I do believe Judkins is going to have a ramp up period, get acclimated within the offensive scheme, which could take anywhere from between, maybe he does play this weekend and get a handful of touches, but I do think before he starts taking on what we'll see his normal touches will probably be at least 2 to 3 weeks. But regardless, once Judkins starts playing, I do think they're going to utilize both Judkins and Sampson, with Sampson making more of the impact on the passing attack. But regardless, if you're looking for running back help until Judkins gets his normal workload, which we'll see as the season goes along, Sampson's not a bad option to turn to. But they do have the Ravens defense this weekend. I know the Ravens got lit up by the Bills offense at the end of the game, but I still think that Ravens defense is pretty solid. But either way, Sampson should be on more benches going forward. My wide receiver ad of the week is the guy that had a great first game down there in Brazil for the Chargers, the third-year wide receiver, Quentin Johnston. He's only rostered on 4% of the leagues. If you guys have followed me since when I returned with my videos in the summer, I talked about my favorite players I love to have on my rosters, which are guys they're in their third season. Quentin Johnston was in the tier of wide receivers I said to watch let's see what their role is going to be within the offense defense and see how their role is going to unfold. And as of right now, it looks like he's going to be involved. He had 5 receptions for 79 yards and 2 touchdowns on 7 targets. And what I said back in the summer when I did that video is Quentin Johnson's situation kind of reminded me of Nelson Aguilar, a first-round pick that struggled in his first 2 years of his pro career with drops, but he was able to put together his best season in year 3 when he made all those catches for the Eagles, and he was a fantasy relevant option. Now, they do have the Raiders on Monday night. I do think that's a decent option if you're looking for wide receiver help. I don't know if I'm necessarily rushing to push him in my lineup because he only got to that 7 target range. I want to make sure he is going to get at least 7 targets a game before I trust him in my lineups, but he does deserve to be on more benches going forward. My tight end out of the week, I know a lot of people that are George Kittle managers are looking for a option at tight end right now, especially with George Kittle being placed on IR today. He'll be out for at least the next 4 games. One option I would definitely consider is Juwan Johnson for the New Orleans Saints. He's only rostered on 1.3% of the rosters. This past weekend, he had 8 receptions for 76 yards on 11 targets. You guys have been with me for the past few years. You know if I see double digits for a tight end, that's going to make my my eyes pop open on that player. And they have paid him a contract, so he's going to have a role within the offense. This is something maybe I personally overlooked with Johnson in the summer. It was, regardless if it was going to be Spencer Rattler or Tyler Shuck, young quarterbacks, we do know, love to target their tight ends. And Spencer Rattler was obviously looking Juwan Johnson's way. And Johnson could have had 9 receptions for like 90-something yards and a touchdown. I don't know if you guys caught the end of the game when the Saints had an opportunity to tie the game with the Arizona Cardinals, but Rattler actually hit him right there in the end zone in his hands, but Budda Baker just made one heck of a play to dislodge the ball and help the Cardinals win that game. So with that amount of targets that he's getting, and there's not just being a lot of great options out there, if I would rather chase the ceiling with Johnson than maybe go after a floor player like Zach Ertz. My flex ad of the week, I'm totally probably going to butcher this kid's first name, so I do apologize, but it's that speedy rookie running back for the Jacksonville Jaguars, Bashal Tootin. He's rostered on 42.1% of the rosters right now. He does have a decent matchup against that Bengals defense this weekend. I don't know if I would want to play him right now. Now, he only ran the ball, 3 times for 11 yards, but the reason why he's definitely worth a shot to add on your bench and stash, especially if you're a manager of Travis Etienne Jr., you definitely want to get him on your rosters if you do have him. It's because if you did miss the news yesterday, the Jaguars traded Tank Bigsby to the Philadelphia Eagles. So this is an open path for Tootin to take the RB2 role behind Etienne. And if anything happens with Etienne getting an injury, all of a sudden Tootin starts to work himself into flex play when the matchup's right, probably more than likely on any given week. So yeah, those are my top waiver wire targets of this week. Michael Penix Jr. at the quarterback, Dylan Sampson as a running back, Quentin Johnson as a wide receiver, Juwan Johnson as the tight end, and my flex out of the week being, again, I'm probably butchering this first name, Bashal Tootin. Moving into my top streamable defenses, again, these defenses do have to be available in at least 50% of the rosters on ESPN, so there is a good chance they're available for you. And again, I'm going to try to remember this every week. Do remember that streaming defense is a high risk, high reward option. Sometimes it works out for you, sometimes it doesn't. I know the Cardinals, I suggested last week, didn't have a high ceiling game, but I was pretty happy streaming them because I played somebody that had the Ravens in their lineup and they lost points, and I just at least got a decent amount of points from the Cardinals, which is why I always say too, even if you got the Ravens defense, which I still think is going to end up being a good defense, when they go against an offense like the Buffalo Bills, you don't want to have those Ravens defense out in your lineup. With that being said though, before I dive in this list, there are leagues I played in where people actually did realize they probably shouldn't be playing the Ravens defense, and they did drop them. So I actually do have some waiver claims on the Ravens defense this weekend because they are playing against the Browns, but they don't qualify for the list. But I'm just throwing it out there. Do double check and see if maybe the Ravens defense is out there for you this weekend. With that being said, let's go ahead and dive into this list. My number one streaming defense, I do like the 49ers against the Saints. The 49ers are only rostered on 19.1% of the rosters right now. Going against that Saints defense with a young quarterback with a not so great offensive line, then you got a very solid defensive front with Nick Bosa and the San Francisco 49ers. And also too, I really do, so there's the high sack turnover potential right there based on that matchup. And then why I do like this too is, with all the injuries the 49ers offense is having right now, that maybe might turn you away because maybe their offense might not get a lot of first downs and the 49ers defense is out there all the time. I think the 49ers defense is probably going to enter in this matchup understanding that they're going to do their all to help their team win this game, especially if Purdy is out of the lineup this weekend. So I think they're going to be actively looking to force turnovers, get those sacks, and get them in third and long situations so they can get after the young quarterback in New Orleans and force those turnovers when you get pressure on him. The other one I like is I do like the Los Angeles Rams defense this weekend against the Tennessee Titans. Rams are only rostered on 7.4% of the rosters right now. And the reason why I like that is the Titans offense is just a work in progress. We saw how many drops they had against the Denver Broncos last weekend. Cam Ward, he did make some good plays, but again, his wide receivers were not only dropping the ball, but one thing that Cam Ward's going to have to learn how to do is he does hold the ball too long at times. I know there was that one point of the game where he took 2 sacks and he took the Titans out of field goal range. He's going to learn how to not do that at some point, you would hope, as a Titans, if you are a Titans fan. But the fact that he's going to hold the ball and then they're going against a young, good defensive front that has Jared Verse in front of it, I'm looking for a lot of sacks potentially in this game from the Rams offense and potentially those turnovers, especially if wide receivers are dropping the ball. You'd want those tip balls out of their hands and going right into the Rams defender like a Kello Witherspoon and maybe get you a pick 6 in this matchup. Another one I do like, just because I think this will give you a high floor, is the Cowboys against the Giants. The Cowboys are only rostered in 3.7% of the leagues right now, and it's strictly because the Giants offense is, as we saw this past weekend, it's a work in progress. They didn't score a touchdown last weekend, which is great when you do stream a fantasy offense. A fantasy defense is going against an offense that does struggle to put the ball in the end zone. It sounds like Russell Wilson might be on a short leash right now, so maybe we do get Jackson Dart in there. Maybe Dart would provide him a spark if that happens, but also rookie quarterbacks do tend to struggle in their first action. So even if that does happen, I would be betting on the rookie making a mistake at some point and maybe turning the ball over and taking on those sacks. I do think this is more of a high floor play, and there is kind of a higher ceiling just because Giants' offensive line is not that great and they're not really scoring any touchdowns to start the season, at least. My number 4 streaming defense. This is definitely a high risk, high reward because we don't know exactly if Week 1 is a liar about the Colts defense, but we'll see. But I do still like the Colts defense against the Broncos. Colts are rostered on 32.2% of the rosters right now. Reason why I like this is I just personally watching this. I know I'm a Colts fan, for those that don't know, but this defense looked a lot better, looked like they were playing a lot faster underneath their new defensive coordinator, Lou Anarumo. They got multiple sacks in that game against the Dolphins. They forced 3 turnovers in that game. And then I'm also looking at the fact that I thought the Broncos offense struggled. Bo Nix didn't really look that great. He threw that 1 interception. So the fact that their offense didn't look that great and the Colts defense looked really good this past weekend, I think it could give you a potential outcome where you could hit a ceiling play if the Broncos offense continues to struggle into Week 2. And then and another reason why I do also like, if you'd want to stream, if say you don't get the 49ers, Rams, or the Cowboys and there's not a better option out there that was maybe dropped, the reason why I do like the Colts as an option is if you wanted to take a chance on them against the Broncos this weekend, they face the Titans in Week 3. So this is a potential Week 2 and Week 3 streaming option for you. Not a lot of great options out there, so with streaming options, obviously I said with the Colts. Again, I also do like the Chargers against the Raiders, only roster on 3.2% of the rosters. I know the Raiders offense, they got the playmakers and Brock Bowers and Ashton Jeanty, and they definitely look a lot better with Geno Smith at the quarterback position when they would face that was supposed to be a pretty good Patriots defense last weekend. But do keep in mind the Patriots were missing probably arguably their best defensive player on the roster with Christian Gonzalez last weekend. So I do think the Raiders offense offense probably going to have less of a production. This is a divisional matchup. I'm looking for more of a defensive battle in that Monday night matchup against Las Vegas. Again, this one is I don't really love it. It's just that I didn't really like any other of the streaming defenses that would qualify to make this list. A lot of the streaming defenses that qualify to make this list are playing pretty good offenses this week. So if you're to miss out in the top 4, the Chargers, I would roll the dice on them against the Raiders in that Monday Night Football game. So yeah, those are my top waiver wire targets and streamable defenses for week 2 of this NFL season. As always, guys, if you enjoyed the video, hit the like button. If you have not subscribed to my YouTube channel, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. I want us to continue to build that number up this season. And then you guys will get me tomorrow night with my top starts and sits for week 2. If you guys have any questions, always hit the comments. I try to get back to people as soon as possible, but I usually try to wrap that up by Thursday because I like that. That's when I usually like to have my roster set, unless any relevant news or injury news comes out throughout the weekend. So I'll talk to you guys soon. Peace out.